The views and content expressed on the Pop Culture Courtroom are provided solely for educational and entertainment purposes and do not constitute legal advice. For any legal matters, please consult with a licensed attorney.
Welcome to the Pop Culture Courtroom. I'm Matt Hardin.
And I'm William Mayfield.
The Pop Culture Courtroom, as always, is a podcast where William Mayfield and I look at incidents in movies, TV, and books and decide whether or not there's a court case based on what we've seen.
And today we're going to be talking about Anchorman.
I'm a man. I'm a lawyer man.
And one of our favorite characters of all time, Ron Burgundy. So you want to set us up a little bit, Matt?
Sure. The scene we're going to do today, so Ron Burgundy is enjoying a delicious burrito as he's crossing a bridge, decides that burrito has been very filling and he doesn't want any more.
This burrito is delicious, but it is filling.
And without looking out the window, he throws out the burrito and hits Jack Black.
Well, I want to start off the podcast by saying that I think the biggest crime of any is getting rid of half of a burrito because burritos are delicious and you should never squander half of a burrito. But in this case, he decided to. And we are going to talk about the implications of that. So Jack Black's character is, who I believe is nameless, is hit by this burrito, and it causes his motorcycle to essentially spin out. And there appears to be some damage to the motorcycle, and it's unclear whether there's any physical damage to Jack Black's character.
Well, I think there is. I've slowed this down when I rewatched this to do this podcast. And it appears to be some blood on the side of his face. And then later, Ron Burgundy has a scratch on the side of his face, too, which doesn't seem to be explained. But his motorcycle slides down. He gets up. He has some sort of injury and then has a confrontation with Will Ferrell, who somehow takes offense to the fact that Jack Black's taking offense to him throwing a burrito at him.
Right. And so what we're going to break down is the whole situation involving the burrito and the bike spinning out, and then also how Jack Black reacted to that. And in this case, he asks Ron Burgundy if he has anything that he loves.
What do you love?
Because his bike is destroyed. And Ron Burgundy says, well, my little, some other things, I don't know if
Scotch is one of them.
Yeah, Scotch is one of them. But then he rounds it up. And of course, my little friend Baxter. And my wife and I have a 4-pound Maltipoo named Rizzo. And this scene hits a lot harder than it did when I watched before, because if someone kicked Rizzo off a bridge, the fisticuffs would come out, as Ron Burgundy would say.
Well, it is the worst special effect of all time. They essentially use a stuffed animal that looks sort of like Baxter. He kicks Baxter into the air after you hear this enormous splash come from this tiny stuffed animal they've kicked over the side.
And it was actually pretty brilliant because I'm sure they saved quite a bit of money on the effects. They're not hiding it. This is not a real dog. But it almost made it even more funny because it was ridiculous, just like everything else in Anchorman.
Well, such as the fact that despite the fact it's not a very tall bridge and you can see the river pretty close by, Ron apparently puts absolutely zero effort into finding out whether or not Baxter has survived this fall. He just goes straight into mourning Baxter.
He's traumatized, and I understand it.
He left Baxter faster than Rizzo left the Cubs after that title.
So for some context, my dog is named after Anthony Rizzo, world champion of the 2016 World Champion Chicago Cubs. He actually came back to Wrigley Field this weekend for the first time since leaving and got a standing ovation. Don't regret it one bit. He won a world championship for the Cubs. It was one of the greatest days of my life, November 2nd, 2016.
And now he honors that great player by naming his dog after a New York Yankee.
Moving on. Moving on. There's two elements to this, and I think that we need to break it down that way. The first thing that happens is obviously the wreck in and of itself. I think Ron Burgundy had negligence here, and that his insurance company, or him if he didn't have insurance, would be on the hook for what happened to Jack Black. He threw a burrito out the window, which a burrito, if there's no trash, if it's not wrapped in tinfoil or anything, is in and of itself not litter. But just because it was not littering doesn't mean it's not negligent.
It's definitely negligent. He throws it out. He doesn't look. This is completely in character with Ron Burgundy, that he's really not thinking of a lot of other folks other than himself, and that's just who this character is. So throws out this burrito, causes this motorcycle crash, and there's a couple different things going on there. You're going to have the damage to the motorcycle, and that motorcycle's dragging on the pavement for a while, so there's going to be a property damage claim. And then there's likely going to be some type of physical injury claim to Jack Black's motorcycle guy character once his adrenaline comes down and he realizes he's probably got an injury from this. I mean, it looks like they're going 25, 30 miles an hour. And frankly, motorcycle wrecks are the worst of the wrecks that we see. There's just not a lot to protect you from the rest of the world that's driving in cars and trucks and semis and things like that. You know, he happens to, I think, be wearing a leather jacket, which helps you a little bit with things like road rash, but it's not going to help your bones not break.
And I think, we've got to remember that this is a movie, but instead of getting Ron's insurance and things of that nature, he jumps right to, my bike is destroyed and nothing will ever fix it. And in reality, Ron Burgundy's, he's a famous guy, probably made a decent amount of money given his stature in the San Diego community. It was very likely that he had car insurance, and that car insurance would have paid to fix Jack Black's character's bike. But he doesn't even jump to that. He jumps right to a self-help remedy. And are we allowed to use self-help remedies?
You can do it, but I think juries tend to latch onto things. And if you have a giant hole in your story, most juries like it if people make the best of things, try to get over your injuries or whatever has happened to you. In this case, you have somebody just get super angry and attacks somebody else's pet. And frankly, the reality is there's a lot of people out there that like their dogs and cats and animals a lot more than other people. And so what he's done is he's taken a very good case of negligence. There definitely is a case here. And it's really been hurt by the fact that he essentially tries to murder Ron's dog.
Yeah, and quite frankly, I think he's created a separate claim for Ron to have against him for the harm that he caused. Now, one thing that's interesting, I certainly view my pet almost like a human, like a personal friend, but the law would view what Jack Black did to Ron Burgundy as causing him property damage.
Yeah, and you can get a little more these days, but it's essentially what is the value of the animal. Now, I'll throw a caveat onto that with this one. This is a talking animal. This is an animal that Ron can communicate with or understands his barks. I mean, later on in this movie, we learn that Baxter can also communicate with bears. I mean, this is a very special dog, and so I think that the property damage in this awesome made-up scenario is actually quite high. What is a talking dog worth? I think that's millions of dollars. I mean, if you could talk to Rizzo, how much would you like that?
That'd be fantastic. Even though in general I know what she wants, which is food, and
love,
food and love,
food,
but food first.
Let me out. Those are three thoughts.
Yeah. In our profession, we often have to get experts to prove things. We can't just walk into court and say that. Even it could be obvious as day, but there are lots of things that we have to get experts to prove. And it's funny idea to me thinking of having to get an expert to prove that this dog was able to communicate in a way that was more advanced than most dogs.
I don't know if you watch like Discovery Animal, some channels like that, Animal Planet. I think there's some pet psychics out there. We're gonna go ahead and go all the way with this one. I think that's where the damages are, and Ron's gonna end up paying nothing because of what he did to his dog.
Well, and we know that Baxter's an impressive animal because he ate an entire wheel of cheese. Yeah.
He did poop in the refrigerator, so I think there's a limit to that.
I agree. There's certainly a case. Now, Jack Black's character hasn't gotten any medical care yet. So in terms of the physical injuries, I think it's going to depend on what type of medical care, if any, he ends up needing. I certainly think that he has a claim for the property damage that was caused to his bike. Even though Ron, what he threw out the window was not trash, it's not in and of itself illegal to throw a burrito out the window. You do have a duty to others around you to make sure that you're doing it in a safe manner.
It's litter. I think he didn't take it out of the wrapper. He threw the wrapper out. That's probably some kind of ordinance violation, but
if it's in the wrapper, I would certainly agree that it's litter, and it could actually then become negligence per se because that violates the statute specifically. So
yeah, I mean, other than littering, it's hard to see a lot more that Ron's done wrong here. I mean, he gets out. He doesn't try to flee the scene or anything. But I will say, I mean, it's very normal for somebody that has a significant injury to not feel it right at the time of the wreck, and it may be in the hours and days before, and so after that. So it's really important, if you start feeling poorly after a wreck, that you go ahead and go to the ER and get checked out. The longer the gap is between the wreck and you getting medical care, the more the defense side is going to have to latch onto to say that injury is from something other than the wreck.
No question. The emergency room is going to have all sorts of machines and whatnot to be able to test you and make sure that if you have some sort of emergency condition that needs immediate intervention, that will get taken care of. And let's just face it, we're not doctors, and they are, and those scans are really helpful. Generally, when you end up following up, places can get a little bit more specific, but emergency rooms are what they say they are, and they're trying to prevent you from being the victim of an emergency where you didn't get the care that you needed, and significant problems were caused later on.
So I think we agree that there's a case in this hand.
Yes, and I'm going to add a subsequent case. I think that Ron Burgundy has a case against Jack Black for property damage, and that property damage case would be more than what Ron bought Baxter for.
Well, and I think in rewatching this movie the other day, there's another scene that probably has some lawsuits come out of it in this one, which is the one where the anchors from the Spanish language and the other two major networks and PBS have a brawl, and looks like at least several people died during that fight.
Yes, I would say that's going to be a situation where these people are dealing with that personally. My car insurance agent is one of my good friends, and I'm pretty confident that if I took a trident to a fight with a bunch of newscasters and killed somebody, that he wouldn't pay for it.
I think that's probably right. It's going to be intentional acts in a fight. I mean, do they mean to kill him? I mean, Brick doesn't seem to be the brightest bulb. I mean, there's a scene where it shows his desk later on in the movie where he has a Rubik's Cube that only has 4 cubes per side, and it's unsolved.
And I'm sure it's being lit by his lamp, because we know he loves lamp.
He does love lamp. All right, some irrelevant evidence from this film. Previously, we'd done The Office. Can you tell me what 4 characters from this movie have been in The Office?
Absolutely, I can. So Steve Carell is the one that really jumps out. He's Michael Scott. And Anchorman was actually predated The Office. So it's very interesting for me to see Michael Scott or Steve Carell in a supporting role and then kind of transition into definitely being the lead role. David Koechner, he plays Champ Kind in Anchorman, but he plays the infamous Todd Packer in The Office, who's always causing problems. And he's kind of a recurring character. He's not there all the time, but when he does come, it's always good for some chaos. Also, we have Will Ferrell. He's obviously the lead character in Anchorman, Ron Burgundy, but he serves as kind of the bridge in The Office between when Michael left the show and when they kind of transitioned to different regional managers and whatnot. His name was D'Angelo Vickers. He was on with Michael for a little bit and then had an episode or two following Michael before he had an injury where he was trying to dunk a basketball, and that was kind of their way of allowing him to leave the show. And then finally, I know the answer to this. I don't know if I agree with it. Jack Black would technically be the 4th. He's obviously an Anchorman. We've been discussing that already today. In The Office, he's in a fake movie that's being watched by Jim, Pam, and Andy. So he doesn't appear on screen, but he is on a computer that's on the screen. So we'll give that to him. I'm sure he got paid a little bit for it, so I guess it counts as a credit. So those are the 4 overlaps there.
All right, a few more interesting facts from this movie. There is a massive amount of animals in this movie. There really are. I mean, we start off with the talking dog Baxter, of course, and then you have a squirrel water skiing, which, by the way, at the National Boat Show a couple of years ago, they had that squirrel water ski, and he's essentially sitting on a little ramp while being drug around by a remote control boat. My kids thought it was the best thing ever.
I'd like an origin story of the squirrel water skiing. Who thought of it, how it started, how they executed it.
God bless them, whoever they are. That's phenomenal. We've got a cat fashion show. We have the Panther Cologne. They talk about a raccoon getting caught in their copier somehow inside. We have a frog named Hoppy who wins a frog jumping contest that Veronica Corningstone talks about. When when he's trying to get his news team together, he uses a conch. And you can see that Shell, the birds and deer, and Baxter also responds to this, and additionally to talking English. Calls Veronica a sweet chinchilla. And then at the end, the Kodiak bears, they can talk to Baxter too. Those that grow to be 10 feet tall, 1,500-pound bears.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it's a subtle nod or if it's not even that subtle of a nod, but it was in San Diego, and it's very famous for the San Diego Zoo, and I think that really kind of made it even more about San Diego, because San Diego is the subject of many of the jokes and some of the plot lines and whatnot. So involving lots of animals kind of made that feel authentic.
Well, and something else about San Diego, another interesting fact related to that is I've always thought Southern California was a very warm place. And I watched this movie and they're essentially either wearing bathing suits, in a few scenes, or they're wearing wool suits in nearly every scene in the movie. The main news guys are. So I looked it up, and the temperature in San Diego averages between 60s and mid 70s, and it's not a lot warmer than that, which was a surprise because it's a few hours south of Los Angeles, where it's in the low 80s every day. Then the water temperature there, 58 to 68 year round in the ocean. That is freezing. So, I mean, in 30A Destin area today, it's 85 degrees, and the water's 85 degrees too.
Pretty awesome to have that weather year round. Maybe not if you're wanting to swim in the ocean a whole lot, but for golf, it was fantastic.
Well, two other quick interesting facts. Will Ferrell actually can really play the flute and has played it since elementary school.
He's a very talented guy. Apparently, he's a really good athlete growing up. He's still big USC football fan and is always involved in sports. I think he's a part owner of LAFC, and I think everyone around him identified him as a really talented person at a very young age.
No, he's phenomenal. He's one of these guys that's good in about everything. Last one. This is a Veronica Corningstone quote, or not a quote, but she goes and eats at a Mexican restaurant with the women from her office, and the restaurant's called Escupimos en su alimento, and that translates to "we spit in your food."
I love it when movies and shows put these things in there where you might have to pause for it, or you might have to look something up or whatnot, but it really shows the added detail there of them going the extra mile to kind of commit to the bit.
Well, and let's give an assist to Cynthia, our Spanish-speaking paralegal, who helped me with the pronunciation. So hopefully I didn't butcher that too much.
And that kind of goes along with everything from this movie. It's one of my favorite movies of all time. They don't try to hide it. Their whole point of this movie is to be funny. Almost every line is to be funny. There's some plot line. There's a little bit of serious, but not much. It is genuinely to make you laugh, and it's one of the best rewatches. I can rewatch it anytime as long as I haven't seen it in the last few months and still really enjoy it. Well, I think we came to a good conclusion on the case or cases and talked about a really fun movie in Anchorman, some cool facts. So thanks for tuning in.
And you stay classy, podcast audience.
Thanks for stopping by.
But mostly, stay classy.
Thanks for stopping by.
Stay classy. Bye.
Thanks for stopping by. The Pop Culture Courtroom is a Matt Hardin Law production.
If you've been involved in a car wreck or any other type of personal injury or wrongful death case, check us out at matthardinlaw.com or give us a call at 615-200-1111.